Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany, here with my co-host Emily Compagno and Harris Faulkner. Also joining us, Fox News contributor and editor-in-chief of The Federalist, Molly Hemingway, and Fox and Friends co-host and the host of One Nation and of the Brian Kilmeade radio show, 7 hours ongoing, Brian Kilmeade. Well, we begin with growing outrage over President Biden's apology to the accused killer of Georgia nursing student Laken Riley. 3 weeks ago, Laken went out for a morning jog near the UGA campus, and police say illegal immigrant Jose Ibarra grabbed her, brutally killed her with some sort of blunt force object, and then tried to hide her body. Laken was just 22 years old. She will never get her nursing degree. She won't marry or have children or enjoy growing old. While her family and friends try to cope with this tragic loss, over the weekend, President Biden apologized to Laken's alleged killer for describing him as an illegal immigrant.
An undocumented person, and I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented. I'm not going to treat any of these people with disrespect. Look, they built the country.
You know, Emily, I can't even wrap my head around this. It's hard to fathom that there is more concern for an alleged murderer and the way he's described than a U.S. citizen victim.
But what else would you expect from the far left? And let's be clear, that's who demands this. Who demands an apology for language. That was correct, by the way. He is legally illegal. They are the ones who demand an apology for language for an alleged murderer rather than the apology for botching the name of that poor girl. I think that Laken's mother said it best when she called the president pathetic, when she called him botching her name pathetic. I think Speaker Johnson said it best when he called the president an embarrassment for cowering to the left as he described. But the bottom line is, ask yourselves, why is the leftist movement all about those apologies? Why are they all about us having to apologize for a factual status rather than even acknowledging the tragic and brutal loss of life of a young American girl? That's the question. It's rhetorical. There is no answer, but they will never be satiated.
And Harris, I want to put my head in the mind of Laken Riley's mother. So imagine, she didn't go to the State of the Union. Of course, she's at home grieving. She had an invitation. Right. She sees the president botch her daughter's name. She wrote this on Facebook on Friday. So this is before Biden's apology. She wrote this. Biden does not even know my child's name. It's pathetic. She was on to say, if you are going to say her name, even when forced to do so, at least say the right name. She writes that. And then the next thing she sees is the president not calling her. We have no confirmation he's ever even called her, but apologizing for the killer in the way he's described.
He's trying to figure out what part of the far left electorate he can flex enough for to get their vote. And look, he knows he's in trouble over the Israel-Hamas war, which is why, he'll be asked, well, is too much support for Israel a red line? Or no. He doesn't even know what he really believes and what his own policies are. So why is that conflated with this? Because it's all after the same group of people that he wants to vote for him. And he's losing. He's losing the black vote, particularly among men. He's losing American Arab Muslims over the issue of the Israel-Hamas war. And he's losing anybody. Right now, the number one topic across the nation, 72% say immigration is the number one thing. So he's losing everybody in each category of politics, including independents, over this one issue. He wasn't prepared for the moment. So what moment is he prepared for? I haven't seen that yet. He met the moment of, if he gets enough rest, he'll have some energy at night to be angry. And that's a basic instinct emotion.
Right.
Like, anybody can get angry.
Right.
But he hasn't met the moment of the most important thing to Americans, a majority of Americans right now. He can't say the latest victim's name. And he also didn't say how he would fix it. Well, how would you prevent that from happening again? You need to wait for Congress to agree? Well, then you don't understand what the problem is.
It reminded me, Brian, it took my mind back to Afghanistan, where, Biden had this reputation of being consoler-in-chief to the maximum. He was the most empathetic guy in the world. That's how he was portrayed in the media. And then he has that Afghanistan interview with George Stephanopoulos. And George Stephanopoulos says, just paraphrasing him here, something like, Afghans were killed under the wheel of a jet. What's your response? And President Biden said, that was 4 or 5 days ago. And the response is, it doesn't matter if it was 4 or 5 days ago. These are people who died. It doesn't matter if thousands of people have died by illegal immigrants or one. This is one beautiful life that should be respected.
Yeah, it also occurred to me in the big picture, they're playing off the 2016 playbook. Remember the 2016, whatever Trump says is outrageous and we're going to try to curb it. He wanted the story to be that Trump mentions the word poisonous and vermin when he talks about people coming across the border, as if to generalize and say, President Trump doesn't like immigrants. That ship has sailed. If you look at the Hispanic numbers, in the beginning, they always told us after the autopsy, after the Romney loss, they said, let's go easy on the border. The Hispanic community thinks we don't like them every time we say crack down on the border. Trump comes in and goes, no, we're building the wall. You're here legal, we'll put a door on the wall. So now they're trying to make it as if Trump says all immigrants are vermin. He goes, no, that guy, the guy that murdered Laken is vermin. The people that are creating havoc in the streets here in New York City are vermin. What's happening in Denver is what's happening with the crime and lack of punishment there. That's what he's talking about. And we can figure out what he means. They try to make a cartoon of his comments, but we already went to Trump 101 as a nation. There's nothing that Jimmy Kimmel can say. There's nothing that Joe Biden can put in an MSNBC interview that's going to make us feel differently. We know what he meant. And for him not to say, hey, by the way, instead of undocumented, he goes, I feel so terrible. It's Laken, not Lincoln. That's what you apologize for. Listen, I picked up the button. It was kind of a frenetic scene. I should never have said Lincoln. That's what I thought he was apologizing for when I saw the headline.
Yeah, so why is he doing this? Let's listen to the far left, to which Biden is beholden. Here were their remarks.
Now, you should have said undocumented, but that's not a big thing, okay? What's the big thing about
no.
He probably should have used a different word, and I think he would know that. But what you should notice about that is not that he made a small mistake.
And Molly, then you had Joaquin Castro saying it was dangerously close to language from Donald Trump. Congressman Garcia, extremely disappointed. Ilhan Omar, let me be clear, no human being is illegal. You want to know who runs the show? These people, the far left.
Well, and the other thing that President Biden said was that illegal immigrants built our country.
What was
That's
that
not
about?
true. And this conflation between legal immigration and illegal immigration is the real problem. There is something about being part of a community where we all adhere to rule of law. If your first entrance into the community is to break the law, it does cause problems for our whole civic health. And it is not just Laken Riley. There are other people who have been killed by illegal immigrants. There are other people who are victims of crime, or just the general societal breakdown that happens when you don't follow rule of law. This confusion between legal immigration and illegal immigration is intentional. You're absolutely right. It is a legal term to describe someone as illegal. There is no problem with that. And if you feel judged by that, well, maybe you should for breaking the law. We don't need to protect the feelings of people who are breaking laws. We need to secure the border. And I think the reason why the issue has resonated is that President Biden took a secure border and created complete and utter chaos, not just at the border, but throughout the country.
Yeah, well, newsflash to the White House, you cannot win with just the far left. And the more you cozy up to them, the further you're pushing independence away. So there's that, but keep doing what you're doing.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Compagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.